Hey everybody, it's Jake again, and now we're going to go over Amazon EC2 Backup and Restore using AWS Backup. This is a 10-minute tutorial that is going to be longer than 10 minutes because the documentation provided by Amazon is out of date. So let's talk about AWS Backup. The official definition is it enables you to centralize and automate data protection across AWS services, offers a cost-effective, fully managed, policy-based service that simplifies data protection at scale, helps you support your regulatory compliance obligations, and meet your business continuity goals. So a lot of these continuity obligation kind of conversations are around backup strategies and policies. Usually a company will have a backup policy where they, for example, keep daily differentials and full backups for 14 days, dailies for a week, weeklies for a month, monthlies for a year, yearlies for the life of a contract or something like that. Pretty standard stuff. There's automation stuff you can do around tagging and whatnot. There's some more advanced things that the getting started tutorial does not go over, and I'm not going to go over that. However, we will go through creating an on-demand backup job, a backup plan, and how to do a backup and restore EC2 instances. So go ahead and make sure you got an AWS account, follow along, and we'll go ahead and get started. So the first thing you need to do is go to the backup console. So that's what we have here. This is what it should look like. And as soon as you get to there, we're going to go ahead and configure an on-demand backup instance of an EC2 instance. Now, or a backup job. If you don't have an EC2 instance, go ahead and create one. I do have one that I'm going to use for this. And if you don't, you don't even really need to log into it, but just make like a basic EC2 T2 micro instance, free tier kind of deal. Make sure you got your PEM file for your key and a security group and all that other stuff, whatever you need for it. But I've got this blog post this blog site, WordPress blog that I created, so I'm just going to be using this. So once you're into the backup console, you're going to configure an on-demand AWS backup job. Now, it says on the navigation pane on the left side of the AWS Backup console under My Account, choose Settings. On the Service opt-in, select the Configure Resource button. And then you're going to choose whatever it is you want to enable. So if I go to My Account, Settings, I can see here all I have enabled is EC2. In the guide, it has all of them enabled. But if you read down further, it says use the toggle switches to enable or disable services used with AWS Backup. In this case, select EC2. Choose Confirm when your services are configured. So you can just go to Configure Resources, turn these on and off, hit Confirm, and then at the end, you should just have EC2 enabled. Once you get to that point, it says under My Account, select Dashboard on the left navigation pane and select Create On Demand button. Now this has changed. This is not there anymore. So if I go to dashboard, there's a backup plan, framework, create report, and you look over here and it's like there's not really anything obvious, and that's for whatever reason it now lives under protected resources. So you don't have any protected resources, but you'll notice over here, create on-demand backup. So that's where we're going to do this. So we're going to click that guy. Resource type is going to be EC2. Instance, I'm going to pick my WordPress blog. So after you create your instance, it should dynamically just show up here. And we're going to do create backup now. And then we'll go back to the instructions. So resource type instance, ID, in the backup window, select correct now. Retention period, we're going to do 7 days. And the backup vault selection, you're going to select one of the pre-existing vaults and continue, or create a new backup vault. So just to do this a little more thoroughly, we'll go ahead and create one. So retention, I'm going to do 7 days. Backup vault is just the default. I'm going to create a new backup vault, and I'm going to call it Nimbus DevOps Backup Vault. This is an encryption key you can use. So here is the AWS Backup default encryption key. And I'm just going to add, the vault already has a name, so I won't add any tags. And then I can go ahead and create an on-demand backup. So this is what it looks like in here. It's a little bit different in the instructions, but it's essentially the same thing. So I have this backup vault that I just made, so I'm gonna choose that, and then for the IAM role, it says if we go back up here, the default role um, is what they want you to choose, and that should be it. So we created the backup vault. Um, enter a name in the backup vault. We did that. Select key. We did that. And then check job details. All right, so then we should go ahead and create the on-demand backup. So we're just creating an on-demand backup of our EC2 instance. Cannot be assumed. Okay, so this role can't be assumed by AWS Backup. So if you get that error, there is a little note here at the top because it says, after you've selected the existing backup vault or created a new one, choose a default role. If you create your own vault, you're going to have to create a role to go with that. So if you choose IAM role name, there's not one, right? So check this out. If I go to default and default backup vault, default IAM role, and I create the on-demand backup, it works. So if you're going to create a custom vault, make sure you also create a custom IAM role that gives access specifically to that vault. And it does mention this at the very top, somewhere in here, about using IAM roles used by backup to create. If a subsequent role is not created, the default IAM role can be used as a backup default role. So just know that if that's something you want to do, you do have to customize that. All right, so now we're going to check the job under your account, ensure the backup jobs tab is selected, and choose the backup job ID. And the status should go from created to completed. So let's check this out. So here's created. It's already in the jobs section, and it's backing up. This is a very small instance, so this shouldn't take very long. So as soon as it's done, the status here will go from created to completed. So let's go ahead and look at what's next. So once it's completed, you can configure an automatic AWS backup job for an Amazon EC2 instance. So to do this, we're going to go to the, we already did this part, right? We're going to go to the create a backup plan. And in the backup plan, that's where we're going to create that job. So while we wait for this, let's go ahead and do that. So from the dashboard, you can click create backup plan, or there's backup plans right here. It'll show you your backup plans, and if you don't have one, you can create backup plans. So you can do it from either place. So I'm going to build a new plan. I don't have a template, so I'll build a new plan, and I'm going to call it daily. So this is going to be my daily backup plan. Backup rule name. Backup rule name is case sensitive. So I'm just going to call it daily. I don't like using capitals. So this is my backup name, my plan name, and then this is the name of my rule. So that's the difference, okay? And you can add multiple rules. So if I do, like, let's say I want to call this one WordPress, all right? I could have a rule that's daily, and I could create another one that's weekly, monthly, and all that stuff. So the backup vault, I'm going to put it in my backup vault, or again, you have to have the IAM rule for that. I'm just going to put it in the default for this one. Backup frequency, I'm going to do daily, and then I'm using all these defaults. Transition to cold storage, never. Retention, I'm going to keep this for 7 days. And the copy to destination, this is if you were trying to account for a regional outage. So I'm in US East 1. If I were in US West 2 in Oregon, I could say, yeah, hey, copy that back up to US West 2 so that in the event US East 1 went down, which would be a very bad day, then I could restore this in US West 2 and my backup will be there. Since a lot of these are regional resources, you can go ahead and recreate these things if you have a backup in a different region. But for now, you don't need to worry about copying it, and you can leave everything else as default and create the plan. So if you look at the instructions, you're going to start with a backup plan name, the rule, the vault, just like we said, the frequency, the window. I will talk about the window for a second really quick. So this backup window starts at 5 a.m. and it starts within 8 hours. So if you use a customized backup window, like let's say you want to start yours at midnight, then if you start yours at midnight, it's still going to start within 8 hours. So it might start at 7 p.m. or it might start at 4 a.m. or somewhere within 8 hours of this. But it has to be able to complete once it's started for your really, really, really big like databases and stuff. It will complete within 7 days. But you could say, hey, if it doesn't complete because it's small, if it doesn't complete within 2 hours, go ahead and just stop trying to back it up and call it a failure, right? So that's kind of what this is. But for now, we're just going to use a backup window defaults, and that should be it for this. So copy to destination, it said leave it as default, but this is again for like a cross-region copy. You can also say, hey, when you do that cross-region copy my tags too, stuff like that. And then you can go ahead and create that. So let's create this plan. And now I will have a daily backup of my WordPress instance, and it will be retained for 7 days. And that's pretty much it. So let's go take a look at our jobs and see if that's done. You can see here it still says created, so it's taken quite a long time. I'm glad we did this other stuff in advance. We don't have to worry about the vaults. We already did this stuff. So then there's a restore. So restoring your instance using AWS Backup. So from here, you can also navigate to the vault that was selected and select the last completed backup. And then to restore the instance, you click on the recovery point Amazon resource number and select the restore button. Okay, so the restore will bring you to the restore backup screen that you have the configuration of the EC2 instance using the backup AMI and all the attached EBS volumes. And then you can set up network and all that stuff. This example proceeds with no IAM role. We'll probably do the same thing. Actually, we do have an IAM role for Systems Manager, but you can apply that when you do the restore as well. But it says after the restore is complete. So to successfully do a restore with the original instance profile, you must edit the restore policy. If you apply an instance profile during the restore, you have to update the operator role and add the pass role permissions. This gets like a little bit tedious because it's like, well, you have to remember to do that. So if you have a run book or something like that for disaster recovery or backups, that's definitely something I would, yeah, finally it's running. I would make sure you document well because you don't want something to not work and then not know why. So anyways, we'll get into the restore backup as soon as my backup is complete. So again, this shouldn't take very long. I think I have an 8 gig EBS volume. So that's how you do the jobs. Again, the on-demand stuff is through protected resources. Your settings dictate what you can and can't. You're opting in for backups. You can do cross-organization account management, but you have to have that set up. I do not do that. If you have an organization, there's cross-account monitoring and backup policies for that. And then there's this thing called frameworks. You saw on the dashboard, it was over here, create frameworks. Enable you to continuously evaluate compliance of your backup activity or define policies. So if you have a policy that says you need to have a backup X number of days or whatever, it will actually look through that and make sure that you're compliant. So if you have a backup failed, you can check this out and be like, hey, this didn't work. I need to track this, right, for data compliance. And you can also have reports sent out. And I can have a report plan that shows my backup report, my restore report, copy jobs report, control compliance report, and then also resource compliance status. So those are just some of the features of AWS Backup. Again, once this is finished, we can go ahead and do a restore. But where do you do the restore? So from the dashboard, you'll see there's nowhere to restore from here, right? It's going to be in your vault. So just like the documentation said, it's just in a different place. We go into this backup vault, and in your backup vault name, you're going to see different recovery points. So once a backup is complete, you'll have a recovery point, and you can go in here and you can look at all your backups, and you can create on-demand backup from here. But from here, what we can do is we can select one of these and do a restore. So that's what we're going to do. We're just going to wait for this to finish. So I'll go ahead and pause the video, and as soon as it's done, we'll do that restore. All right, so our backup is complete, and the next thing we're going to do is our restore. So if you go to Backup Vaults and we go to Default, we can see we have a backup here, and I'm going to go ahead and select this, and I'm going to do Restore. So the creation time is here. If you want to look at it, this is when it was created. This is when it expires. So today's October 14th. It expires on the 21st. And here are my tags, right? So we're going to go ahead and restore this sucker. And you can do the same instance type and the same VPC. I'm just going to keep it in the same VPC, same subnet, same security group. Restore with original IAM role. So this will preserve the original IAM role, or you can proceed with no IAM role. And then the restore role is the default role. Specify the IAM role that AWS Backup will assume when creating and managing backups on your behalf. Okay. If the AWS Backup default role is not present, one will be created for you with the correct permissions. All right. So there's some advanced settings. We don't need to worry about this, but this is just like when you create it, as far as what instance behavior you want it to have, tenancy, all that stuff, user data scripts, things like that. And then we can go ahead and hit restore. So now I have a restore. It's pulling me back to the jobs link. And in here on the restore jobs tab, we can see it's pending. So here we have my backup, and here we have my restore, and you see it failed. And so I can go into the restore job, and I can see you are not authorized to perform this operation. Please consult permissions associated with your backup role. Refer to AWS Backup documentation for more details. So if it's not going to work, then we can try it and go, okay, well, give me my backup again. Let's do a restore. And same thing, same everything, same instance role, but I'm going to choose IAM role. And then for the role name, it says if the AWS Backup default role is not present, one will be created for you with the correct permissions. So that is actually not true. So if we go back into the documentation, it says restoring your default role, specify in the restore role pane, accept the default role or choose IAM role to specify. So this one's using the default role. And then you can check and it says it's complete and everything's gravy. The problem with that is it doesn't actually work. So we tried that, right? And hit cancel, and I go back into, oh, come on. Let me just go into jobs, restore jobs, and we see it failed. So if you just copy this, that encoded message failure is not going to help you. You can just Google this. And this is from May 2020. Let's see. However, I get an encoded message that says you are not blah, blah, blah. Resolution. The AWS security token to decode the failure message. So we need to use this. Now, why is that? It's probably because it's encrypted, right? So then verify AWS IAM role that ran the restore job has sufficient permissions. So run the decode authorization message command using the AWS CLI if using Linux-based OS, and you can combine the command. If you receive errors, then go here. Okay, cool. So let's check this out. Okay, so decodes additional information about the authorization status of request from an encoded message. If a user is not authorized to perform an operation that he or she has requested, the request returns an unauthorized 403 response. Some AWS operations additionally return an encoded message that can provide details. So how do you get that? It's encoded because the details can constitute privileged information that the user who requests the operation should not see. To decode this, a user must be granted permissions via an IAM policy decode authorization message action, which we probably have because I'm like an administrator. And then you'll get some information about it. So if we look at, I highly doubt this is my role, but it says I'm not authorized. I don't really know why. The other option is to take a look at. Let's take a look at our job. It was encrypted, so it wasn't encrypted before, but it's encrypted now. And trying to restore this with an encryption key may cause a problem. So while I troubleshoot this with you, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my protected resources. And you can see this one here. You can do a restore, or I can just create another on-demand backup. So I'm going to do now, retention, days 7, default, create on-demand backup. Now when it does this, if you go back and look again, like if I were to create another one, wow, it's EC2, oh wait, no, I want protected resources on demand. Yeah, EC2, this guy, create backup now, days 7, default, okay, advanced, there's nothing there. So default vault, all that stuff. Cancel. One completed, and then one failed. Cool. Let's take a look at this. So this has an encryption key, which is in your settings. I'm pretty sure, no, it's not in your settings. It's just part of my backup policy. So I don't want to do this decode thing. I have administrator on this account, so that shouldn't be an issue. And we're just going to double check. So I'm going to go to IAM, users. I'm going to look at myself, and I'm going to look at my permissions. Attached directly, okay, and groups, admin. So I have literally everything. So it's definitely not my IAM role. So if we go out of here, let's check the AWS documentation. You can use roles to control access to your backups by defining narrowly scoped roles and specifying who can pass that role to AWS Backup. Okay, so let's see if there's a restore. For restores. Default service role. This includes an IAM policy that grants AWS Backup permission to create, delete, or describe the new resource being created from it. It also includes permissions to tag. This IAM policy includes the necessary permissions to all resources and the other doc that they have. Let's see here. Printing resources, find, restore. Yeah, it's not super helpful. So when you go through these, guides, sometimes you'll come across, like we already saw that the UI was outdated. There may be other processes in place that you have to have in order for this to work. So AWS account owns the resources that are created in the account. So the AWS is going to own that. So the other option would be to take your backup and when you create the backup, do this. Don't use a default role. So if we're going to choose a role, service role for backup, go. Cool. So I'm just going to create a role that has that instead of using default and see who exactly owns this, because if I don't own it, then that would make sense why I can't access it or restore it. So I'm going to pause the video and wait for this to finish. Okay, so I got the restore running. So do you remember the documentation had this? Remember I said you need a run book for this? So this is actually applicable to pretty much any time you use anything other than proceed with no role. So the reason it does this is because the restore policy. So if you apply an instance profile during the restore, you have to update the operator role and add pass role permissions of the underlying instance profile to EC2. So this role has to be added to EC2, not to the user performing the restore. The default service role created by AWS Backup manages creating and restoring backups. It has two policies, this policy and this policy. It also allows the action IAM pass role to launch EC2 instances as a part of restore. So if you're going to do this, you need to attach this role to the instance with these two create a role that has these two policies and attach it to the EC2 instance. So the workaround of that is restore it, and you see it completed here. And all I did to do that was I took this backup that I have, and I just did a restore. And when I did the restore, I left everything as default, but instance IAM role, I just said proceed with no IAM role, and then I restored it, and I left restore role as default. So the reason I did that is because it was able to get through and complete. That's a backup job. So this restore was able to complete, and the instance doesn't have that role. So now this instance is up, but if I go to EC2, we can see whether or not the instance still has a role or not. So here's my instance, my previous one, and this is the instance that was created as the restore. So this is my old one, and this is the new one. So if I go to security, we see it doesn't have an IAM role, but if I look at my old one, it does have an IAM role. All right, so if I wanted to, just like the documentation says, if I wanted to edit this, I'd have to go into security and add this IAM role. So if I go to actions, security, modify IAM role, and then come here, enable EC2 access to systems manager, because that's what I had attached, hit save. Now this instance has this IAM role. So it's just a post step that you have to do as part of the restore. So worth noting, it was on there, I mentioned it, and then I didn't follow it because I was like, that sounds like it's too much work, but it's absolutely required. So that, if you run across this problem, that's why it doesn't work. And so if you do want this to work in the future, you just need to have that role ready to go, created in advance, that gives your EC2 instance or it gives backup permissions to do that. AWS Backup, not EC2 instance. And that's it. So this is my restored version. You'll see it has a different private IP address. It has a different public IP address. So 54.234, 81, 80.209. This is 52.7, and then this one is a completely different private IP. This one has an elastic IP attached to it, and the new one does not have an elastic IP attached to it. So the other thing you have to do when you're doing a restore is, if I took this WordPress instance and I said, hey, just stop this instance, we did a restore and this is working correctly, but it's application unaware. So if I were to refresh my blog site, you'll notice it's just spinning. It's going to time out and say it's not available because the instance is stopping. So what you would need to do is you would need to take this elastic IP that we have for WordPress, and you'd have to disassociate this elastic IP address, which I can do, and then I can reassociate it with this other running instance that I just created, and say allow this elastic IP reassociate. That's if you want to specify whether the address can be reassociated with a different resource if already associated with a resource. So that's only if you want it twice, right? So that's something, even if you have this checked and you associate it, and then I go back to EC2 and look at my instances and go, okay, this one's stopped, so this doesn't work. But because I reassociated it, and this one's running, and now it has this elastic IP, if I refresh again, now it's up. So if you did another backup and restore, it's not going to let you do that. It's a one-to-one relationship. So it will allow you to reassociate. Now, if I go back to EIP, because I have that selected, I'll get you the Amazon definition of this. The associate elastic IP address, it's already associated. Even with this reassociation, it says if you associate an elastic IP address to an instance that already has an elastic IP associated to it, the previously associated elastic IP will be disassociated but still allocate to your account. So if I look at, if you Google this, for example, if you just copy this and then look for docs.amazon, not Stack Overflow, go look at docs.amazon, then this will be the most accurate documentation. So let's do a find for reassociate. No, okay. I'm just kidding. Basics. Ensure all active connections. To disassociate, yes. Allocate, when you allocate. Yeah, so in other words, you're going to have to redo this elastic IP after you do a restore. So the two things you're going to need to do is go back and add your IAM role, and then you're going to have to go associate your elastic IP. So restores do have a little bit going on there. The easiest thing to do is to script this and automate it so that it's in a template and you can version control that and just run all of this automatically. And that'll give you more of what you're looking for. So anyways, that is a little bit more about using AWS Backup. So it is a great backup solution that's super easy to use compared to a lot of the other options that are out there. If you have any questions about AWS Backup, feel free to let me know. But I kind of wanted to go through this and just struggle through, like, here's the errors you're going to get, all that stuff, and see exactly what it is that it's doing and how it works. So once you're done, here's the restore at the end of this documentation. The next steps, you can connect, cleanup, delete the instance, okay, and delete the recovery point. So to clean up, all you're going to do is, let's make a copy. Actually, I already have this one. Let's go to EC2, whatever instance. If you're not going to keep it, right? If you're not going to keep it, I'm going to go to instances, and I'm going to take this new one that we created, and I'm just going to, actually this one's running, but that's fine. We're just going to terminate the one that I restored. And then since I changed my Elastic IP, I'm going to go back to here. I'm going to disassociate this. And then I'm going to associate it with my WordPress site that's stopped. And now that's done. And then I can go back to my WordPress site and I can start this instance. So right now this shouldn't work. You see it's spinning, so it's going to time out. So this is shutting down. This is pending, and it should start here. All right, so that's terminated. So this instance is gone. And then while we wait for this one to get started, and it says it's running, and now it's back up. What we're going to do is we're going to go back to AWS Backup, and I'm going to go to Vaults, and this Nimbus DevOps Vault doesn't have anything, so I'm going to go ahead and just delete this vault. And you have to type the name. All right, so now I'll have as a default vault, and we're going to keep that, but I'm going to take these backups, and I can just delete these suckers like this, and now I have no backups. So these are deleting. So now in my jobs history, I'm still going to have the history, right? All that's still going to be there. But as far as, and like you'll still have this data, but as far as the vault is concerned, as soon as these are done deleting, your default vault will have 0 recovery points. And that's what you want to see. So if you click on it and you just go in there, look, they're already gone. So if I go back, yeah, now recovery points is 0. So that's good. Protected resources is gone because we deleted the on-demand backups. Job history will still be there. Your settings are still the same. So make sure if you need to back anything else up with AWS Backup that you opt into that service. And then that's pretty much it. There is some stuff I did with S3 that with Systems Manager. I'm just double checking that there's nothing in here that could potentially, yeah, there's nothing else in here. So this is all from Systems Manager. So I'm just going to delete this stuff because I don't need it anymore. And then that's it. So if you have any questions, like I said, let me know. If not, that is a good intro to AWS Backup, and I will see you in the next video.